What's good, wonderful people? Thank you for joining me again here on Learning with Lear. My name is Ryan Verdon. I'm the founder and director of Lear Cultural Coaching. Lear works at the intersections of identity and relationship to build communities. You can find out more about me, more about Lear by checking out the website. That link is in the description. Also, please go ahead and follow on social media. My Instagram and TikTok are also in the description. Last week I was on the road, so you got the video in the car. This week I'm back home in my office. You get the typical background. So happy to be here. And Whiteness is still giving us things to talk about, y'all. So let's dive into it. This week I want to focus on pretty huge news, actually. The International Criminal Court just released arrest warrants or are seeking arrest warrants for three senior leaders of Hamas, as well as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant. This is huge news, y'all, and we'll see what happens. There's so many smart people who work in policy and work in international law and all that who can break down the ins and outs, the details. I suggest that you check out Mark Lamont Hill's channel. He's been doing a daily War on Gaza report, as well as is a Middle East scholar and speaks often about what's happening there. Yeah, so there's so much to talk about with that, right? What I want to talk about though is the role of whiteness in this, because I have been pretty adamant in stating that whiteness is fundamental to the nation state of Israel. Um, Jewish folks have a very unique relationship to whiteness, right? Richard Spencer and his cats a few years ago were talking about Jews will not replace us. White nationalists hate Jewish people. 100% true. Anti-Semitism is 100% real. And we're going to embrace the both end here. You know, we do that on Learning with Lear. And Jewish people with white skin move in the world as white and have been able to access certain privileges that come with being white and being perceived as white. And so it's a very unique relationship, but it's a relationship to whiteness nonetheless, right? And on the international scale, Israel certainly enjoys the benefits of being considered Western. They enjoy, obviously, unlimited United States support. And that's where I really want to talk about, right? If you remember, I've talked on this channel, and if you've been in space with me before, I've talked a lot about the mechanisms of whiteness. What does whiteness actually look like? So it's not just looking at me, right, the level of melanin and my physical features. It's not just that, although those signify to other folks that I may or may not be considered white or have whiteness prescribed onto me, depending on where I'm at in the world, depending on the decade that you're talking about, right? Because whiteness is fluid and has changed. But whiteness is more than just that. Whiteness is about a certain worldview, a certain values, and a way of being. Most importantly, it's about the disconnect from a way of being that honors humanity, a way of being that centers community, that centers connection, a way of being that acknowledges the creator and the awesomeness of creation. None of those things are present within whiteness. Uh, Whiteness is defined by its ability to dehumanize others, um, like the indigenous people of Turtle Island, as well as Africans who were enslaved due to the rationale of whiteness. And we're seeing that here, right? And these arrest warrants and the reaction to the arrest warrants, and they're not even arrest warrants; they're their requests for arrest warrants for like indictments, and the reaction is telling about the role of whiteness in our society. Um, so let me give you a brief timeline, right? So one, we got college encampments. Salute to all those brave people out there on campuses demanding divestment and all that. But remember, I did a video on them. The reactions to that were largely defined by white men who were chanting USA, right? It wasn't about Jewishness or interrupting anti-Semitism. It was about supporting America and supporting a country that America is allied with, and the racism that comes with and Islamophobia that comes with how we perceive brown skinned folks in the Middle East. Um, And so that is present, right? The United States has always been politically a backer, financially and militarily, of Israel. And ever since October 7th, Biden has come out and said, we are a staunch supporter of Israel. We're unwavering. The record in the UN and the Security Council demonstrates that. And this is just the most current manifestation, but I think it's the most telling one of the way whiteness impacts how we move. We being America, and oftentimes too many Americans. So what the rationale for this war was that Israel was responding to the assault on October 7th by Hamas, which I want to be clear, we've always talked about, and people that I have followed have always acknowledged were war crimes. Even if you say Hamas is at war, right? Because of the illegal occupation, which I support. I think that that's true. Not that I support Hamas. I'm saying that the Palestine has been occupied for 75 years, and occupied people have every right to defend themselves and fight for their freedom. That did not excuse the actions on October 7th. Civilians were killed. That is a war crime. That is a violation of international law. That has always been, well, I haven't heard anybody really excuse October 7th and say that though that was not war crimes. And the International Criminal Court supported that. They issued requests for arrests for 3 senior leaders of Hamas in connection to October 7th and the 220 plus days since then. What is new is that they also issued these arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant. And Biden has come out and said it's atrocious. There's no parallel between Hamas and Israel, and that they're shocked and appalled by these arrest warrants. But what's crazy is that in the same breath, these people will talk about how they're at war and war is brutal, and they excuse away over 35,000 deaths in Palestine and Gaza, the vast majority of them being women and children. And they say that because they're at war with who? With Hamas. Um, and so they're at war in one breath, right? And that would suggest, okay, then the rules of war apply, which is what the International Criminal Court is holding you accountable to. And then once the accountability comes, now all of a sudden there's no parallel between Hamas and Israel, and this is outlandish, this is wild and crazy. And so we have to ask the question, is it actually a war, or is it a genocide? Are you at war with the Palestinian people, or are you at what rights of protection? How do Palestinian people have, even what rights and protections according to international law and the rules of war do Hamas fighters have? Right? And what we're seeing in this reaction is the exposure that it was never just about Hamas fighters. It was never about being at quote unquote war. It was about genocide. It is about genocide. It is about ethnic cleansing, because they don't believe that these people are actually human, and are worthy of the human rights being protected. And they're making no distinction between Hamas and Palestinians. Uh, even if they say, well, Hamas is the government of Gaza. Okay, international law still applies, right? And then when we suggest that actually, maybe Hamas isn't the government of Gaza because there hasn't been elections for 16 years or however many years, and 50% of the population is under 18, and so they didn't vote for that. And maybe this is a more complicated situation. Then all of a sudden that it gets flattened, right? No, then now it's not that complicated, and we have to eliminate Hamas. And we do that, and if civilians are in the way, civilians are in the way, right? There is nothing that, no mechanism to hold Israel accountable to seeing the humanity of Palestinians. period. And the reaction to these indictments demonstrates that. It is the surprise and shock, and actually talking about how outlandish these are is fundamentally demonstrating the role of whiteness in dehumanizing the entire Palestinian people. And it's not just the entire Palestinian people. It's the same logic that dehumanized the Vietnamese. It's the same logic that justified the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's the same logic that facilitated the slave trade. It's the same logic that facilitated colonial settlerism here in Turtle Island. It is all fundamentally about whiteness and our disconnect from our human community. We see that plainly right now, and the only way that we can do anything about it is to address that disconnect. It's to stand up, continue supporting the calls for a ceasefire now, continue supporting an end to the occupation, but also to look and see where else does this disconnect manifest, because it's not just that. It's manifesting in uh, the fact that we have so many unhoused people here in America, the fact that we have privatized and made a commodity our ability to be healthy and health insurance. It's in our um, system of mass incarceration, in our carceral state. It's in our education system where we don't see full humanity of young people, in urban centers, and we underfund their schools. It's everywhere, right? It is everywhere. This disconnect, and it's not. It's the disconnect is in white people. That's why we have so much. We're so disconnected. We have so much hate and disease and hurt and pain that we out here killing people, and um, you know the culture of violence and rape culture that we see. Uh, it's the reason that this goofball kicker from the Chiefs, what's his name, Bucker, talking about women's vocation is being a wife. We need validation from so many external places because we have internalized the disconnect and the disease and the poison of whiteness so much so that we have to assert ourselves on other people, assert our well-being and our power and all that on other people. And it's destroying us quite literally. Free Palestine, ceasefire now. Holla if you want to talk about anything I said. Follow on social media. Peace and love, y'all.